Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to show you how to draw a realistic nose. This is another facial feature that we are going to be learning to draw realistically to work towards drawing a full realistic portrait. So follow along, play and pause the video as you need, and just try your best. Remember that growth mindset. So all you're going to need today is a piece of paper and a pencil. The first thing to know about drawing a nose is that it starts with a basic formula. The basic formula is having one large circle and two smaller circles right next to it that overlap. And to create different shapes, instead of using circles, you could create ovals. And some people might have more angular noses, wider noses, taller noses, thinner noses. So whatever shapes you choose to use here are really going to determine the final shape and look of the nose. And these are just some of the possibilities, but there are tons of other different ones. But for this demonstration, I am just going to use the circular shapes for my nose. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw that bigger circle nice and light with the two smaller circles that overlap almost like a kind of a weird Venn diagram. Again, drawing super light because we're going to end up erasing a lot of this structure. Now we're going to kind of use this frame to create our details on. So as you can see here, I'm just choosing a few parts to draw a little bit darker on. You're going to outline the outside edges of these smaller circles first, similar to what I'm doing here. As you can see, I'm just kind of using those original circles as a guideline. Now I'm drawing the tip of the nose and the nostrils. So I'm following the bottom of the biggest circle, and then where the circles overlap on the bottom is going to kind of show me where to draw the nostrils. But you can see the lines are not touching each other. Next, I'll erase, but before I do that, there are two parts that I want to leave. The two spots where the circles overlap on top, I'm going to leave, but everything else of those original circles that I haven't kind of gone over to define my nose, I can erase. So now I have a pretty good nose shape set up, and from here on out, it's just going to be value and shading. Remember, value is what is going to give something its form and make it look realistic. So as we're shading these, it does kind of help to remember those three original circles. Think of them like three kind of sphere shapes as you're shading. So you would have shadows closer to the edges of the circles that also kind of follow the form, and they're not just like perfectly straight lines. And the bridge of the nose, we are not going to leave as just two lines. It's actually all value. You won't see any harsh lines on the bridge of a nose. The shape itself is kind of like a tree trunk, what I'm drawing here, but it really just depends on whose nose you're looking at. So I'm just adding some shading in a shape that kind of helps define where the edge of my nose is. Next, I'm just going to keep adding some more value to show the form of my nose a little more. You would have shadows kind of off of the tip of your nose, and those two spots that we saved at the top of our overlapping circles are going to be a little bit darker as well. And just like I said earlier, remember that each of these circles really kind of represents a sphere shape. So you'll have some shading that follows the shape of that original circle, and it would also include a highlight. And another thing that adds to the form of the nose is the shadows that it casts on the rest of the face. So if you have some light on you, your nose would also create a shadow. Another important thing to remember is that contrast is also what helps add to your form. So if you make those darker values darker, it will make it seem even more lifelike. I'm going to shade in the nostrils, but as you can see, I'm not just creating two perfect dark circles. What I'm doing is I'm just shading that area that is underneath that top line that I drew. So I'm just giving that a nice dark value, and they aren't perfectly even, and that's fine. And now I'm also going to add the cast shadow that would be underneath the nose. Like I was saying earlier, your nose would cast a shadow on the rest of your face. And now I'm going to start working on what is called the Cupid's bow. That's the area between your nose and your upper lip. And even though it isn't part of your nose, it's important to know how to use the value here. So there is like a dip right underneath the tip of your nose, and that dip would be shaded. Now I'm going to leave a little patch of a highlight. That's where the ridge is on that area. And I'm just kind of giving a nice light value on either side of those ridges. And you can't see it now because I had it a little bit out of the frame, but I'm just drawing a quick upper lip shape so you can kind of see how this would meet up with the lips. And now I'm just using my finger to kind of blend out those values on the upper lip, and I'm using it to blend the rest of the values on the face. Just be careful not to overblend. I've also gone ahead and added just a little bit of shading to show you kind of where the eye socket would be, so you could see how that would meet up with the nose as well. And from here on out, I'm just going to be kind of adding some more contrast like I mentioned earlier. I'm going to take my dark values and add another layer of shading on top of them just to make them even darker. Like I said, the more contrast you have, the more realistic whatever you're creating looks. So I sped this part of the video up. I'm not actually shading or drawing this quickly. There's just not a lot of new information right here. I'm just adding more value. As you can see, I added a little bit more to the top of the tip of the nose. And I'm also just kind of going around and making the darker areas even darker. And I'm carefully blending some of my areas as well. I pulled out those two kind of notches on the top of the tip of the nose. For a shadow in my Cupid's bow, I add almost like a J shape when I'm shading it in. And I'm also using my eraser to pull out highlights as I'm going. Another spot to definitely add some more darker value to is going to be right at the tip of the nose. So right on that area, I'm going to add an even darker value just to give it more form, and on the sides of the nose as well. And now I'm defining the bridge of the nose a little bit more just by adding some more value on top of it and blending that out as I go. And as you can see, I'm using my eraser a lot. If your values get too dark, you can just erase them back a little bit to get them lighter. And I'm also imagining that the light is coming from the right side of my page right now, so that would create a cast shadow on the left side of my face. Your nose would leave kind of a shadow on your cheek as the light gets blocked. So here is my pretty much completed realistic nose using value to draw it and create form. Remember to use your growth mindset and be patient with yourself while you're working on these. And have fun, everybody.